My feelings about the last week have been there's been many questions. I've been in a sense of questioning because when we looked at how this election would go, I was very confident going in that it would go one way, and now we wake up the next morning and it was different. So, needless to say, there's just been questions, and it has been unsettling, but it has not been a sense of being over by any stretch.
Shuleka?
I have a very different feeling than what Melanie has. I live in Washington, D.C. area. I work very closely with the Trump campaign as a volunteer. And I'm also for part of Fairfax County GOP, which is one of the largest GOP in the area. I kind of follow Trump campaign very closely, and I listen to him talk very closely. He has been talking about this voter fraud, mail-in ballot situation right from March when COVID situation started. So I kind of estimated that there is going to be voter fraud. But I think where I am shocked is to the extent of voter fraud that has happened.
Okay, well, Shuleka, just to step in there, a couple of things to mention. You mentioned the GOP, which for our global audience may not mean much. That is the Grand Old Party, which is a name also for the Republican Party. And you mentioned voter fraud there, of which those cases are ongoing and we have not received any concrete evidence for. But why don't we move on to Bobby? How are you feeling? How's the last week been for you?
Over the last few days, I have come to the conclusion, you know what? Trump's been right every single time he's pointed out things. He's not been wrong. So I'm going to put my faith in him and my God, and it's all going to be okay, and Trump will prevail in the end.
Let me just take a pause there and draw this out slightly, because whether or not we agree on the matter of voter fraud, what we can agree on is that stealing an election requires a supreme level of planning and coordination. And many experts will agree that even if there were voting irregularities, it is likely that it is not enough to swing it. What are you three hoping to achieve, or your party hoping to achieve with this challenge?
Exposure.
The exposure. As much as I would like President Trump to win, I think that is going to be the ultimate win. If we don't expose it this time, Republican Party is never, ever, ever going to have a president that really is as candid and has this amount of guts to withstand this amount of criticism and expose anything. If we as Republicans can't utilize this opportunity to drain the swamp, we can never, ever do anything in the decades to come. So we need to utilize this opportunity to get our democracy back into American regular people's hand, like me and Melanie and anybody else that are hardworking individuals.
But at this stage in time, what we have is a President-elect Joe Biden, and this hasn't gone in your favour. And just going back to your concerns about how the election was carried out, if you are so sure of your concerns, how can you be so sure that it didn't go both ways?
Well, when I will speak to that specifically. In the past, we have not had elections go the way we would want them to go. This was evident in the years that Bill Clinton was elected, again when Barack Obama was elected. However, we as conservatives accept those results and we say, okay, fair play, you won, better luck for us next time. Also, we had a unique situation, particularly this year, where the media throughout the world was suppressing information of great achievements of our president. And when you've got that type of power behind a party and is working so hard to suppress positive information about the president and in fact put out negative information that's not even true, you've got a unique set of circumstances for this particular election. Now, with that said, if it is in fact proven that this election fairly and squarely went to Joe Biden, I can assure you that the Republicans will accept that and move on. That will happen, but that has not happened yet. And as we wait and see how this is going to turn out, it is important that you note how calm the right is managing the situation and just methodically going through the information and the facts. And
would you say it's methodically going through the information and facts, or do you think it's stalling? Because that's how critics might see it, that what we are seeing here is a degree of stalling.
It is not stalling at all. Nope. It's not stalling. What it is that this became evident.
Due process. We are
Go
absolutely
exactly.
following through the due process. We are securing the proofs via videos. We are going through the poll workers. We are talking to the pollsters on the ground. So we are going through the methodical law and order approach. Please note the Republican Party is all about law and order.
Let's talk about you as individual voters. When you went to cast your vote, how transparent were you with your friends, your family, your community about who you were going to vote for, and how is that received? Bobby, why don't you come on in here?
My family all knows who I was voting for, and I know who they were voting for. My immediate family are conservatives, so we all voted for Trump. And the main reason that we voted for Trump is law and order, our First and Second Amendments. My friends, they know who I am. I had some friends in the past election when Trump won and I voted for Trump. I lost some friends, but that's their choice to walk away. It hurt my heart, but it is what it is. You don't like who I vote for? That's on you. That's not on me. I've cried too many tears over losing friends last time around. So this time around, I've prayed about it, and they're cleaning themselves out of my life, and that's okay. Last night, as a matter of fact, my neighbor across the way, she goes, "Hey, I'm real sorry to hear about Trump's loss." I said, "It's not over yet, and I have faith that he will win. And just wait it out."
So I was actually an Obama voter, believe it or not. As an immigrant, we are made to believe that you have to be a Democratic voter. That is the worst part about being an immigrant. We are low information voters. That's why I think it only took us President Trump to come back and say that all immigrants need not be a Democratic voters, right? So I did go to an Obama rally like everybody else, like all immigrants go to as a brown person. And then I'm a healthcare professional. I have a doctorate degree. So as an intelligent woman, I did hear him speak. And I was perplexed of how unpatriotic his speech was. I came out of his speech, decided not to vote for him second term. My only choice was President Trump at that point on the ballot. I voted for President Trump. And again, from that point, I have been a President Trump supporter. But one last thing that I want to conclude by saying, though, if you are a Democrat, you can never become an American because they want us to be always an immigrant. They attach to you by saying that call yourself as an Indian American, call yourself as a Black American, call yourself as a Hispanic American. However, if you're a Republican, you can always proudly say you're an American. You don't need to attach yourself and say that you're a Hispanic American and a Mexican American. You're just going to be an American, period. End of the story.
That's really interesting to hear that, Srilekha.
With that.
And just to interject on what you're saying there, Srilekha, you talk about feeling more American by voting for President Trump. But here we have a president-elect who is going to reverse the decision to the travel ban on citizens from the 7 mostly Muslim countries. We've got a president-elect who will reinstate an Obama-era policy of granting immigration status to undocumented migrants who enter the US as children, etc. So I'm just wondering how that leaves you feeling, whether or not here we have a president-elect who is seemingly more pro-immigrant.
No, ma'am. I think he is confusing the people, and that's where I think low education information voters come in. He was in the vice president position for 8 years, and he was in a position to make pro-immigration for 47 years. So I won't trust for whatever he says.
Let me just bring in Melanie here as well, because I want to hear about your journey to supporting President Trump as well, and whether or not you resonate with any of what Srilekha and Bobby have had to say about their decision-making process.
I want to go back to something that Bobby said. She mentioned her faith in her description of how she felt about voting for Donald Trump. This is something that is overwhelming in our country. Christians have come together and across our country in support of Donald Trump. And right now we are seeing what happened is not being consistent with what is good and righteous. Now I say good and righteous, not from just strictly a Christian standpoint, but just was as universally deemed as good and righteous. And because this crosses over religious lines. So there is a huge support for our president in that regard, which I firmly believe in myself.
Yes.
Going back to our initial question that you mentioned about how did I feel this week, I was at peace because I knew ultimately God would prevail in this circumstance. And I knew ultimately good would prevail in this circumstance. So for Christians, we are taught to be patient and we're taught to be very mindful of God's plan.
Okay.
And there's a great deal of that going on in this country right now. And there are thousands and millions of Christians across this country. And I dare say all other faiths. I can only speak to my faith, so I don't want to speculate on anything else. By the same token, I'm not dismissing the other faiths. I'm just saying that right now there are people who believe this is a defining moment in American history and God's providence.